I'm so
Hello.
happy to have you.
Oh my gosh, this is such an honor and a blessing, Tana. Like I was just like, oh my gosh, as I was like looking at your website a minute and like doing all my stalking, I was like, wow, I get to hang out with her today. How
That's
cool.
how I felt. And I was just telling everybody how envious I was. I went to your page and I'm like, wow, this woman's got the arms that I just completely envy. You are just buff. I'm so jealous. And ever
Oh,
since I went into this sort of like, midlife hormonal shift, I like my muscle tone is not the same. And I'm like, I just love how vibrant you look. You are
oh,
so
thank you.
muscular the way I just like, it's just beautiful.
Oh,
And I
thank
love
you.
that. And then I started digging a little deeper and I was sort of mind blown because you said a couple of things on your website that surprised me. I mean, when people
Mm,
look at you, they're like, wow, this woman is so healthy. She's so vibrant. She's a doctor. She's, you're a functional medicine doctor. You're accomplished and all of these things. And you said something that resonated so deeply with me because
mm,
I literally wrote something almost identical in my new book. And
no
it was
way.
about how you used to think that you would just wish that this truck would cross the line and hit you.
Yeah, like I get the chills like every time I think of it because I mean, it's so sad and devastating to think that, as extraordinary as we are, like that we could think of our lives as being just extinguished just like that. Like it's, oh,
It makes me wonder how many other people watching right now. I mean, I literally had that identical thought. I was in such a wicked depression that I
mm,
had this thought that I'm wasting oxygen on the planet. And my thought was, I can't kill myself because my mother will beat guilt into me into the afterlife. But I just wish that this truck, I just literally wish that that truck
mm,
that's driving down the road right now would just cross and just hit me and it won't be my fault. So when I read that in
mhm,
your bio, I was like, wow, I'm not the only person that has had that crazy thought. And it makes me wonder
mhm.
how many other people have had that thought. And I'm going to guess it's probably a lot, especially right now. Um,
Right. Oh
Depression is probably
gosh. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I've had my like ups and downs and like, I mean, I'm in the middle of one right now. It's
yeah,
like we have those peaks and valleys that are a part of life, and right now is an even more extreme version of that. And I'm like so grateful for my past experiences and knowing that I have the tools, I have the strength, I have the power within me to overcome whatever crosses my path. As the time when I was driving to my residency program, which I only lasted 3 months in because I knew it wasn't a fit for me and I knew conventional medicine wasn't my path. And I knew, like, in that moment, I was like, this is not the life that I'm destined for. Like, but it
right.
was such a dark, dark period where it's like, that there's more, that there's a greater purpose, but you can't see it, you can't feel it, you don't have anything else to hold on to. And so, like, now in the craziness that I'm in right now, and we can talk more about that, and I'm happy to because it relates to everything in your book and stuff from my book. But like now I know it's like I'm nowhere near where I was 6 years ago in that
Right.
deep despair. And I got out of
Now
that. So like I
you've
know what
got
I'm
tools.
facing.
Right. And you
Exactly.
got tools in your tool belt because we all hit highs and lows. And like you said, and this is just unprecedented what we're going through. But you wrote this
Oh,
book more than enough. And
yeah.
and I love that. What's the subtitle of it? I love that's
So
so pretty.
it's the healing journey to love yourself, listen to your gut, and live your truth.
So I love that, but I want to push back for 1 second because I want to hear what your answer is. So when people used to tell me love yourself when I was in a
Mm,
really bad place, I'm like, okay, those people have all been drinking some weird Kool-Aid spiked with something because they're all freaks. There's no way I can love myself. It just sounded like some pie in the sky crazy talk that when you're in a bad place, it's hard to even conceive of loving yourself. So
mhm.
tell us like give people tips or tell us what you mean and how we get to that place.
Yeah, yeah, and it's something that I come back to often because, when we have these traumas revisiting us, it's easy to fall back into those old patterns. So, like, now I'm like, there it is. And so I'm naturally a very loving, compassionate person. Like, it's so easy for me to be in the middle of my own dark space, but then see somebody else suffering and pour out love and encourage them and inspire and keep showing up for everyone else. And so, like, in those moments where it feels impossible to love myself, I detach myself from me for a moment and think, okay, if this was my sister or my best friend, like, what would I tell her? Like, how would I show up for her in this moment? And how can I do, maybe even if it feels impossible, maybe an ounce of what I would give to them? How can I provide that for myself? And it's not easy because there's always this little bit of resistance of like, oh, well, it's not going to work, or like, it's, you know, too far gone, or I don't deserve it, or like all those voices start popping up. But it's like, no, it's like I know that I deserve my own love. I
I
know
love
that
that.
I deserve to be happy. I deserve the same love I show everyone else. Why wouldn't I do that for me?
That's actually a great tip. Because one thing I tell people sometimes is like, if you can't love yourself right now, then if you can just love other people the way that you want to be loved, like just so what I love my community for that reason. If I'm having a bad day and I go on and I read the comments that people leave, it's like so weird how it can take me out of this bad place. I don't have a community
Exactly.
that's like beating each other up. I don't like, it's not toxic. So it's
Mhm.
amazing how fast it can take you out of that. And likewise, it's part of why I chose the warrior metaphor, is because when I was at my darkest place, I'm like, I need something to grab onto right now. I need a life raft. And I started trying to
Mhm.
visualize, like, what is the opposite of me right now? Like, who
Right.
is the opposite of me right now? And I started thinking to myself, warriors are people that, like, they're just, they can work through anything. They're so tough. They move with purpose. They move with intensity. And I started thinking to myself when I was at my worst, it's like, how would a warrior move right now? How would they think
Mhm.
right now? What would they do right now? I mean, it was just, and sometimes I could just barely do it, but it's just like if I could just put one foot in front of the other. Does that make
Right.
sense? And I would just make myself take a
Absolutely.
deep breath and just move with intention, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
And it's that first step, it's like it's so easy to get in our heads and think I have this long journey to go and I'm never going to get there. But every journey is just a series of small steps. And
Yeah, how
so,
do you
and
eat
that's
healthy?
that's
One bite at a time.
exactly, but that's honestly where I struggle the most is like being the high achiever that I am, and
Yep.
I'm, extremely gifted in a lot of things, and things come naturally to me. Like I grew up doing gymnastics, and it was just like, oh, I can flip and do all these things, and this is just what I do. So I expect everything in life just to be so natural. And when I don't, and I have to like struggle and appreciate each little step, it feels like I'm not accomplishing enough. And
Yeah.
so being able to celebrate ourselves and be like, hey, like I didn't want to take a step at all, but I took one. Like that can be the hugest one. And from there is like once we elevate our spirits, then it's like, oh my, okay, I'm, off to a little bit of a jog and then a sprint. And then, okay, maybe I need to take a rest for a little while. And that's okay too.
And I love that we are in a different time in life right now. I think I'm a high achiever also. And I think as high achievers, sometimes I know for me in the past, it's like, nope, put on the mask, be perfect. And inside you're broken, right? And just inside you're just completely hurting. And high achievers tend to want to put on this mask of perfection. And I feel like we're
Mhm.
finally getting to this time in history, if you will, when it's like okay to take the mask off. And I love
Yeah.
that. It's like we finally can admit that we are not perfect, that it feels good to support one another. Like a rising
Mhm.
tide floats all boats. And it's like,
Right.
no, I don't feel good today. Can I reach out to my community and maybe they will elevate me?
Yeah, it's like and especially because I'm sure you have a lot of women in your community like I do. So it's like when we're able to show up and say, I'm having a crappy day, or it's like
Yeah.
I am, and still be honest and loving and all of our, pure nature, like people love that because they're experiencing the same. Just like I'm sure there are other people who have had that moment where it's like, I wish this truck would just take me out. And, as you mentioned, perfectionism and the struggle around that, I just had this recollection, like when I was writing my book. So one of the chapters is on perfectionism. And the irony of it as I was writing is I'm a bit of a perfectionist at writing too. And so I'm trying to convey like how toxic perfectionism is, as I'm writing this book and getting caught up in this, like, I have to make this perfect so people understand how toxic perfectionism, and I got caught in that own trap myself. And it's funny, as I was writing the chapter, it was like, wow, like literally this whole chapter is like the story of my entire life. Like as I was like writing, and if you get a chance to read my book, happy to send you one, by the way. I was just like, absolutely. I was just marveled at how it's like, this has been the story of my life. And am I going to continue to buy into this? Because it's a lie. Like, no one on the planet is or ever was perfect. So why do we hold that standard for ourselves? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I often tell this story, but for people who may not have heard it, this is something that really helped me, because I mean, perfectionism literally paralyzed me. It's paralyzing. And I now teach that it's an excuse to fail. It's an excuse for women to pick toys and go home and not try. So it's like, I can't do it perfectly, so I'm not going to try because I don't want to look bad. And so, but it was a huge lesson for me when I started practicing martial arts. So I remember going in, and I'd been attacked when I was 15, and I had a few incidents that happened that I write about in my book where I felt really disempowered, and I didn't like that feeling. So I started practicing martial arts, and I'm like, I just want to learn how to fight, right? I'm just going to learn how to punch someone in the face, whatever, because I just need to learn how to fight and protect myself. And when I walked in, my master, that wasn't how it went. I walked into my master, first they teach you awareness to be prepared to avoid fights. And then I walk in one day and he's like, you need to pad up. We're going to learn how to fall. You're going to learn how to fall safely. You got to fall over and over and learn how to do it safely and get up quickly and get away. And I'm like, I don't want to learn how to fall. I want to learn how not to fall. I want to learn how to not fall and how to hit someone hard. And he goes, no, it doesn't work like that. You have to learn how to fall safely and get up quickly. And you have to learn how to take a hit. And I'm like, he's like, and learn from it. Like, learn how not to do that again. You got to learn how to block hits. You don't want to get hit, but you're going to get hit. And it was a light switch moment. I was like, wait a minute. Falling is not, and he said, falling isn't failing as long as you get up. And I'm like, wait, falling isn't failing. It's a normal part. And I envy warriors. And I'm like, warriors expect to fall. They have to learn how to take a hit. They got to learn how to move on. And they don't think of that as failing. It was just this light switch moment. I'm like, you can't expect perfectionism if you expect to be a warrior. And for me, that was just huge.
I love that. I mean, I feel like I should be taking notes here. I love that. Falling isn't failing as long as you get up. That is gold. Right?
So I don't like the word failure. I call it the F word.
It is. It's such a trap, because we're taught, especially as young girls, you got to be prim and proper and have it all together, and you don't want to let anyone know if you make any mistakes. And so we carry that into, at least I've carried that into every part of my life. And it's something that on a daily basis, I have to have this super awareness of, because it's absolutely crippling, just like perfectionism, it goes hand in hand. And we have to figure out a way to be able to look failure in the face and embrace it. I love the idea of it's like failure is that next step to your next success, or however the saying goes. But it's hard in the moment when you're facing that thing that you don't want to tackle, to think if this goes awry, then it's okay. I'm going to be able to recover and get up. It's like, no, but if I fall, then everyone's going to be looking at me and they're not going to trust me, or I'm going to lose all my credibility, and all the stories that start turning. Meanwhile, in real life, people are looking at us and they see all of the brilliant things that we're doing, and they see how we're showing up each and every day, and they remember that. And when we do fail and we share about that, they're inspired by that, because they know that they have permission to do the same.
It's so true. And you touched on something else when we're talking about from trauma to wellness. I want to touch on something you just mentioned, and that is, we're taught as young women to be prim and proper. It's just a cultural thing. Little girls are taught to be polite. And I actually write a lot about that in my book too. It sounds like you probably
can't wait to read it. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
I feel like we're just kindred spirits, because it's crazy. I feel like we're just resonating. But I was, after, as someone who was molested by my stepfather at 12, actually 11, I was almost 12. I had been very timid. I was very timid. I was very quiet. And I then went to the opposite extreme. I went from being very timid and quiet to like, I'm like, nobody's going to protect me. I'm done being polite. And I went to this opposite extreme. I found my voice, but I was a little wicked with it for a while, if you will. I used it as a sword until I sort of found my balance. But I raised my daughter very differently. I raised her, I'm like, look, if you feel like you're in danger, you need to, like, pardon, I know I'm on social media, but it's like, be a bitch and apologize later if you're wrong, because I don't want you to ever put yourself in that position. And so, and I'm like, listen to your gut, and you always talk to me and I will believe you, because I never wanted her in that place. And I know that sounds very unconventional, but, and maybe I went a little too far because my daughter is very strong-willed. We often say she's either going to be the leader of a gang or the leader of the free world. We're not sure which one, but
or both.
but this idea that we need to, what do you say to that? That we need to teach women to be, little girls to be so polite, and, you know, how do we balance that with finding your voice?
Gosh, I wish I had that question or that answer to the question, but my mind immediately goes to like, oh my gosh, we have a female vice president coming into office. Like how cool, like we have at the highest position or second highest position of leadership. So it's like reflecting back to like how we do that. Like we have to lead by example. And sometimes it's not about like having the right thing to say. It's, you know, about showing up in a way that feels an integrity with our highest self. And in the moment, you know, it might not be perfect what we said or what we did, but being able to continue that dialogue, like, you know, with your, use an example of your daughter, for example, like if you are together and something comes up and you speak out in a way that maybe you aren't proud of, like having that conversation, like, you know what, it might have been better if I said this or did this instead, and we all learn and grow together. You know, it's being able to shed that, you know, like, oh, I have to be perfect, and if I'm not, then okay, let's just brush that under the table. We're not going to talk about it anymore. We're just going to keep moving forward. Like avoidance and silence is something that, like, in my family in particular, has been like a toxic evil force that I'm like actively trying to rid. And sharing my voice, like that's something that I'm so grateful to have this platform here to be able to share, you know, my inner traumas, my wounds, my joys, my victories in a way that I hadn't been able to feel comfortable within my own family. I've been able to find that in a community of strangers who, some of whom have become closer than people in my own family. So it's just, I mean, that all that comes from being able to show up and talk about it.
So, and one thing, I mean, to anybody listening right now who is trying to overcome trauma, just hasn't learned to find their voice, I can't recommend enough getting professional help. I know EMDR really helped me get past a lot of stuff just to find my voice in a more positive way, not a way that was used as a weapon, if you will. So, because you want to be assertive, but not aggressive if you can. And I mean, if it's a matter of protecting yourself or saying nothing, be aggressive if you have to. But when you, if you can just on a daily basis learn to be assertive and in a positive way, we call it firm and kind, drawing those boundaries, you know, I mean, EMDR or some kind of professional help can be so beneficial to people recovering from trauma.
Yeah, I started EMDR last year. Actually, that's a good reminder. I did it for a few months and got past some things, and that's, yeah, like I probably need to get back on that train too. It was so great to be able to have, you know, something I could turn to in the moment and just like tap it out and feel things shifting within me instantaneously. And that's, I think, something so powerful, especially for us women, to be able to feel our own power and see what we're able to do within ourselves. Is so often we feel hopeless and helpless and like a victim of our circumstances, and we aren't, but most of us haven't been provided with the tools to be able to make those shifts, and EMDR is just so powerful.
So what are a couple of tips you can give people before our time is up? A couple of practical things from your book that for going from trauma to wellness, and what do you recommend? Something they can take away.
Yeah, so one of the things that's been so powerful for me is learning how to be honest with myself. And this isn't something that's in my book, but this is from like my latest development, is it's easy to get all of the anxiety and all the thoughts just spiraling and ping-ponging around like a bunch of rabid squirrels that we can't even
Monkey
make
mind. I call it monkey mind.
exactly. It's hard to like make sense of all the stuff going on in there. And so like journaling has been my savior in this being able to overcome the trauma and work through it, because as long as it stays in my head, it continues to fester. But if I can get out on paper what I'm feeling in the most honest of ways and look at it, then it's like, oh, like this isn't controlling me anymore. This isn't like a pressure cooker that's mounting more and more pressure by the second. Like I can look at it for what it is and then start to clearly create a path to freedom. And, to quickly like share like a little bit of, what I've been experiencing. So I recently moved back to Texas. I'm from College Station originally, but now living in Austin, was in San Francisco for the past 5 years. But a lot of my trauma has been around, embracing my worth. And a lot of that came from my relationship with my mom. And to be honest, like, I don't think my mom really loves herself. So, like, how are you going to show your child like the purest unconditional love if you can't do that for yourself? And so moving back to Texas, it's like, I love my mom dearly, but she's triggering as hell. And it's really, 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 I was like, like deep breaths. And so being able to, and this is, it's very fresh as Thanksgiving, we were with my family. And so like coming back this week and like feeling a lot of these things resurging, I've cried a lot. I've gone the full spectrum of emotions. And like today, like I just came to a place of peace and being able to say like, you know what, like I accept my mom for who she is. Like I can accept the fact that she might not ever understand me like other people do. And I can be okay, but being able to be honest with myself and the fact that it's like, I probably do have a little bit of resentment still built up there that I'm actively working to release, and like being not judging myself for that. Like that's really, really hard. But I know that like I'm creating the kind of life where I don't want anything holding me back from being the most genuine, kind, compassionate person I can be. And, I deserve to treat my mom and treat myself and my emotions through this process in a way that's going to enable me to rise above. So, but getting really honest, it's scary facing those deep, dark emotions. But honestly, like once you air them out, it's so liberating.
No, it's so fantastic. And one thing that sort of reminds me of is, I often tell people, and I learned this when I did a Byron Katie seminar, and that's pretty mind bending. But
Mm,
I remember learning that, I was stuck on something that someone had said to me that was hurtful. Like
mm,
it was a very painful memory, and or something someone had done. And when I discussed it with her, she said, "So how many times did that happen?" And I said, "It happened once." And she said, "How long ago?" And I said, I don't know, 20 years ago. And she said, "Oh, that's interesting." And she said, "And how many times have you thought about it over in detail?" And I'm like, "Oh,
oh,
like 10,000? I don't know." And she's like, "So who's been more cruel to you?" And I was like,
ooh,
"Oh, that was like,
ooh,
uh,
ooh.
it was really awful. Like by not disciplining my mind, I was allowing that person to hurt me over and over and over. I was allowing it. Something happened
Mhm.
once, I'm allowed to happen 10,000 times. And
Wow.
so it was a hard pill to swallow, but it was like, oh, okay. When you're talking about being honest with yourself, that's that's honesty at its core, and it's not an easy thing to do. And it doesn't diminish what happened to you. It's just saying, are you going to allow that person to continue to hurt you? Like, be honest with yourself. You are being crueler to yourself by allowing that to continue to go on and on in your mind.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I love that. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been like
See, this is
medicine
what
for my
happens
soul.
when we support one another. I love this. It's magic happens.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Wow.
So,
So, thank
I'm
you
so
for sharing that, because I feel like that's a breakthrough for me. Is like I know that when I catch myself in those moments of like reliving a mom moment, it's like
yeah.
to be able to like, no, like it's done. Like
Yeah.
I have the power to be able to stop this from
Yeah.
happening again.
Well, and I like what you said. So coming up with it's easy to say don't think about it anymore, but that's hard. It's better to come up with a strategy like what you said, to journal it, or to do something where it's like, okay, once I do this, like that's going to be my way of putting it to bed. And then when you catch yourself, it's like, okay, I'm going to journal it again. So
Because there's
something like
always
that.
more layers. Like there's
Right.
layers and layers to peel back, and the work is never done. Like I feel
But
like
catching
I've
yourself.
exactly catching it, because once that wheel starts turning, it picks up speed really quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Can I see your book again? Can you show us?
Yes, absolutely. So there
Where
it
can people find
is. People can find it on Amazon. It's a paperback and Kindle. And I would
Awesome.
love, let's see, I love gifting out books to people when
Oh,
they
nice.
show up live. So
That's so fantastic.
let's see. So whoever comments first, what their number one take, and if they live in the US, that's a key thing. What your number one takeaway from our discussion today, I am going to send this copy to you and another copy, Tana. So let us know.
Oh, that's so great. What a great tip. That's
Oh,
so
well,
nice.
I feel like it's
So we're
been
waiting for a comment. Whoever comments first.
lots of hearts coming. No comment yet. Hearts don't count, but keep them
Yep.
coming.
Hearts don't count.
And
That's
I just want
awesome.
to say thank you to everyone here
Oh,
who's, ooh, Joseph Keenan. All right, don't let myself
yeah.
hurt myself. Yes.
Yes. I like that. Yes.
Awesome.
Good.
So I'm going to send you a DM, Joseph, and I'm excited to share my book with you.
Fantastic. What a great gift. This has
Oh,
been so much fun. Thank you so much, Dr. Robinson. Where can people find you besides Instagram, obviously here? What is your website?
yes. So my website is rivawellness.com. I can also type it down here in the comments.
Fantastic.
Because right now my link in my bio is to a different cause that I'm a part of. Real quickly, have to shamelessly plug this 1 minute. So Eat Real is a nonprofit organization that I'm a part of, where they're helping increase real food access in public schools for kids.
Oh my
And
gosh.
just last year alone, they were able to remove more than 10 pounds of sugar per kid from their diet
That's
by,
amazing.
I know, it's incredible. And this year we're projected to do close to 7. And through everything that's happened this past year with the pandemic, they've been able to shift their efforts to be able to continue providing meals to kids not able to go to school, to be able to provide masks, like early in the pandemic when you couldn't find any. And it's actually a female-led organization. So it's been the probably one of the game-changing things that's happened to me this year, to be able to partner with this organization. Because if we don't nourish children from a young age, we're destroying their future. Like, and I mean, I was reading on your page, the junk food and cereal diet as a kid. Like, how well did you perform? How good did you feel? And so
That used
empowering
to
our
be, that
children.
was my mission, my passion. It was so annoying to me when I wrote the Omni Diet. I'm like, we feed people who need to eat healthiest the worst foods. Prisons, hospitals,
Oh my gosh, it's
schools,
crazy.
rehab centers. It's like, what are we thinking?
Exactly.
So,
Yep. So eatreal.org is
oh, that's
the
great.
organization, and the link to donate and support us is in my bio as well. So thank you for giving me the floor to share about that, because it
Oh,
is
absolutely.
we're changing the world. Like, it's so amazing to be a part of this change.
Well, I'm so honored to be able to finally talk to you. It's
Yes.
been fun sort of exchanging with you, and you are just so vibrant and so beautiful, and
Oh, thank
just
you.
I just you just
I
resonate.
feel
Everything you say resonates.
I
So
feel this every time you show up on my feed. I'm like, ooh, what's coming up today? Like, you are a brilliant light, Tana, and I'm just so
like
grateful that you discovered me. It was no coincidence. And I know
yeah,
this is
no,
the first of many chats that we get to have, and I look forward to supporting you in your future efforts too.
thank you so much, Dr. Robinson.
You're
Have a wonderful
welcome.
day.
You too. Bye, everyone. Thank you for all
Bye.
your comments. Bye.